The stage now, the Democratic candidate for the 7th Congressional District, Susan Wild. Bringing to the stage, the Republican nominee for Congress, Marty Nothstein. And it's my pleasure to bring to the stage, running as the Libertarian candidate, Tim Silfies. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the debate.
All right, Chris, is this your time to come up here? And we have done a coin toss. Everyone's aware of the order and the finish. So we got that squared away. Okay, Chris. Sorry?
What's the order?
You want to go over that, please? Make sure that we have that covered.
So we did a flip of the coin. We always try to be as fair as possible during these programs. In fact, we have specific timers, of which I am one of, who will be sitting over here to your left, because we know that equal timing is so important. We will begin the coin toss for opening with Marty, Susan, Tim, and we will conclude with Tim, Marty, Susan.
Very good.
Thank you.
I just want to just make sure we had that. Okay. Chris, it's all you. Chris, by the way, is expecting snow this afternoon. He's got a test. What was it? Just the dust of that, like 2 or 3 inches? Is it?
2 or 3. So anyway, guys, if you could, I didn't hear a reminder, but if you could please silence, turn off airplane mode, your phones. Nobody wants to be that person who has their phone go off in the middle of this. And also, at the beginning and at the end of each show, like I said, we're doing 2 shows. I'll have you clap. I'll be over here on the side. I'll kind of be going like this. I'll have you clap a little bit more than normal. And other than that, have a great show. And thank you.
All right, Chris.
Now he'll do the all-important countdown.
Actually, everyone roll, please. All right. Stand by. And start clapping, everyone.
Really important. I want to thank you. Before I get started, I want to thank all 3 of you. Running for office in today's world is not for the faint of heart, and I thank you. You're good people. Let's hear it for them for just. That is, I want to start with, I'll go a little bit economy. And Marty, I know we did a flip of the coin. You're the first question. Minimum wage, we know the governor here of Pennsylvania has talked about $7.50 to $15. Your thoughts on minimum wage, should it be raised, and what would the impact be from your perspective?
Well, I don't necessarily think minimum wage should be raised by the federal government. You know, we should let markets dictate what minimum wage should be. We really do. I don't like it specifically because it's going to hurt seniors. You know, anything that hurts seniors is something we need to take a serious look at. You know, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour is going to raise the cost of goods across the board. Who's that going to hurt most? Senior citizens on fixed income. So we got to make sure we look at all aspects before we start making wholesale minimum wage requirements. So right now I can't support that. Again, I think markets should dictate what minimum wage should be.
Gotcha. Susan, your thoughts on that?
I'd like to rebut that. We have a $7.25 an hour minimum wage, which if you're working 40 hours a week, puts you at about $15,000 and change, well below, almost $10,000 below the federal poverty line. That is unconscionable. We have to start investing in our workers, and it's overlooked that the more money we put in the pockets of our workers, the stronger our economy will be, because they will be able to buy more goods and to invest and to buy a house. All of the things that make our economy grow. I do think we need to do a phased-in minimum wage.
Okay, so not a jump right from 7 to 15?
Not an immediate jump, because I am cognizant of the effect on small businesses, but I absolutely think that we need a phased-in minimum wage increase to $15 an hour.
that sounds good. And I think we all want the same things. We want workers to have good jobs, and we want people to prosper. People can't buy goods and services if they don't have jobs. I saw this, I was the business reporter for this network. A lot of people might recognize me. And I saw this up close and personally. When we were talking about raising the minimum wage, regular people, the entrepreneurs who drive this economy, came to me and they said, Tim, I take care of my workers. I love my workers, but I can't afford this. I want to invest in my company. I want to hire more people, and I can't when I'm forced to pay this much money. So we have to keep in mind the unintended consequences.
So what are you saying? Don't touch it.
No,
Market should drive
I think the market should
Okay.
determine.
And again, Susie, you think that leaves some people behind? Would you?
I absolutely do. We have a federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Pennsylvania is one of the states that's elected not to go any higher than that. And I think that we are leaving a lot of people behind.
So back to this market-driven economy. Right now, we're talking about unemployment 3.7%. The market hit 26,000 the other day. The economy is good. Hands off, or what we could do differently? Susan, go ahead.
The economy's been growing for a number of years, preceding this administration. And the economy is great if you are able to invest in the stock market. But there are an awful lot of people here in the 7th District who don't have that ability. The people I talk to across the district don't feel like we have a strong economy because they're working, in many cases, 2 and 3 jobs to get by, to pay for their health care, to pay for their utilities. So the economy is working if you're already wealthy.
So what you're saying is, go ahead. So you're saying leaving a middle class poor behind, or a combination of both?
I'm sorry.
You say when in this economy we're leaving some behind.
I think we are leaving working families behind and young people who are trying to get out of debt from their education, and people who are underemployed.
All right, Marty. Go ahead.
The
I'm going to
economy's
go to
strong, but
Marty.
we have to think about the underlying issues at hand. We have to have all of the aspects of a healthy economy. Keeping taxes and regulation low is great, but we also need to think about balanced budgets and being fiscally responsible, because those things are going to catch up with us. Both the Democrats and the Republicans, for decades, have been spending us into oblivion. And we now have $21 billion in debt. We have $20 deficits out to the horizon, and both sides are to blame. That's why we need something different.
Are you surprised by how little? Are you surprised by how little we hear relative to the debt? I mean, it really
Yes,
is.
it's an imminent crisis.
Okay, Marty, go ahead.
Yeah, well, we do have a buzzing economy right here in the Lehigh Valley. There's no doubt about that. 2 years ago, we were told we would never see the GDP growth surpass 3% ever again. We were told our manufacturing jobs were long gone. And actually, I think we were told, the only way they were coming back was by waving of a magic wand. We had an election. 2 years ago, we had an election. And now we're seeing GDP growth sustainable at 4% this year. We have more jobs than people willing to work. So we have a budding economy right here in the Lehigh Valley. These are results. These are results we cannot argue. But we have the lowest unemployment rate since 1969. And in this election, a lot of it's going to be about the economy. And I've been campaigning hard. I've been in every corner of this district. I've been meeting a lot of people. People are happy. People are jobs. Their families have jobs. Their kids have jobs. These are good things.
All right, there we go. I want to ask this to Charlie Dent, who of course had the seat prior, was our congressperson before, who did I guess my point is he broke rank with the president in some cases, and was maybe more independent than most, say, maybe people in that position were. The question I would ask any of you, because everyone talks today about bipartisanship, it sounds good, people get to Washington, the world changes. I'll start with you, Marty. Would you be, quote unquote, a rubber stamp for this president? Would you be more like a Charlie Dent, who maybe took him on for affordable care, those kinds of things?
Well, I'll never be a rubber stamp for anybody, Tony. I'm an independent voice. I have results at the county level as well, being that independent voice and working with both sides to get things done that matter most to our community. Well, that's creating the lowest millage rate for seniors and homeowners in 27 years, making big investments for a senior care center, Cedar Brook. So to me, it's all about getting things done, viewing things in a pragmatic way and not stopping until you get it accomplished. At times you have to work with both sides. That's what's going to make things move forward in this country. And right now, more than ever, that time is now. So we need to make sure we elect people who are willing to work with both sides and not be rubber stamps for any special interest or any special person.
It's not about bipartisanship, it's about nonpartisanship. Are you happy with the partisan civil war in this country? Is this helping you and your family? What's happening right now? If you want something different, you have to vote for something different. Because we can't continue down this road where both sides continue this partisan clash, this deepening cultural conflict we have. We have to have actual independent voices who don't answer to a party or a president.
Okay, Susan.
I find it interesting that Mr. Nothstein says that he would not be a rubber stamp for the president, but one of the highlights of his website is that he calls for the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, which of course Republicans have been trying to do forever now. Charlie Gett, to his credit, voted against the repeal of the ACA, and I did admire that particular vote of his. I think he stood as an example of somebody who was civil and dignified, not necessarily bipartisan, but I think that that's what voters are really looking for, is somebody who will go to Washington and behave in a civilized manner, be willing to work with people on the other side, and try to move this country forward, because we just continually polarize from side to side, and that doesn't move us.
Anyone want to jump back on that? Marty, you're good with that? Okay, so let's get back to that. So we're talking about bipartisanship and the need. Can you name something, Susan? I know it's your site. It says you would like to work in a bipartisan way. Can you think of something where you might reach across the aisle to work in conjunction with the Republicans?
I sure can. First and foremost would be infrastructure. I think infrastructure is something that is equally cared about by Democrats and Republicans and independents and everybody else. It's something that would benefit this district tremendously. It would bring jobs. It would improve our infrastructure. We all saw the floods a few weeks ago when we had rain after rain after rain and drainage ditches were filling up. We desperately need infrastructure. It will bring good paying jobs and lots of them. That's the first thing I would like to try to work on with somebody on the other side.
In a bipartisan way, okay.
Absolutely.
Marty?
Absolutely. I would agree as well. Infrastructure is very important. I don't think there's a candidate up here that's not going to agree on infrastructure needs, especially right here in the Lehigh Valley. Education is also very important to us. The education here in the Lehigh Valley is also very important. So I think, bipartisan means to get these things accomplished is what's important. Is what it's going to take bipartisanship to get those accomplished.
Great jobs and expanding. I got it. Okay, Tim, your thoughts on that?
So the difference between me and my opponents is that it's not just that I can cooperate with people I disagree with. I actually agree with both sides about different things. That's why I'm in a unique position to be sort of a neutral arbiter between these establishment parties, because there are things I line up with Republicans about, there's things I line up with Democrats about, and it puts me in a really good spot to be able to be an independent voice for Congress.
Does it put you in a really good spot when you get to Washington? I mean, it's great to say it up here on the stage. I'm an independent.
It is great.
You got to go, yeah, but you got to go down to Washington to make something happen. And let's face it, parties are powerful. I don't believe, I could be wrong. I don't think there is an independent congressperson right now. They're the D's or R's.
How's that working for us?
There we go, Bernie Sanders. Okay.
But that's the thing. It's
Who is a
it's
socialist,
not
not
working for
independent,
us.
but
The House
anyway. Close.
The House of
Okay.
Representatives is supposed to be a place
Mhm.
where people go for 2 years, 4 years, and then they go home. That's why we should have term limits. That's why we should have
term limits.
people like us.
Gotcha.
What is so wrong with
All
that?
right, go ahead. Anybody jump in?
Speaking of term limits, I'm the only candidate that's taking the term limit pledge. I put a personal and we're not taking government funding pension as well. Because I agree, you're supposed to go down there and serve your people, serve your constituents, and then come back home, and then work again.
Susan, go ahead.
I just may say, bipartisanship is something that requires skill. It requires compromise and negotiation. These are skills that I have honed over 30 years as an attorney. My job has been to try to resolve disputes between people. I've had to work with a lot of very, very difficult people, and my job has been for my client to bring about a resolution that is a good one for them, but in order to do that, you have to have the other side feel like they were also able to get something out of it. So I think those are skills that are essential in Washington.
Okay, let's. All right, let's go.
About what's been working in Washington, we have a lot of attorneys and lawyers in Washington right now. It hasn't really been
Too
working.
many. Too many.
Anyone jump on that, or?
I'll be happy to answer that. There's a reason there are a lot of attorneys in Washington, because Congress makes laws. And I think the ability to understand how to read a statute, how to write a statute, how to make it strong and foolproof and without loopholes is something that really actually, where the legal training is essential and
Again,
important.
we're off to a good start with the bipartisan cooperation.
Well, all right, I'm going to go back to you then, Tim, when you say that. Again, we've got two parties, have had two parties and for a long time, and the world has worked pretty well. What are you saying? I guess I want people to know, what are you saying in terms of an independent viewpoint? How does that translate into change? This is my point.
For this district, in this moment in time, where we have this deep cultural strife, for this district to stand together with a common voice and say, the Democratic and Republican establishment is not working for us, and we want something different. For us to do that, that alone would send a message that would rattle Washington and would rattle that establishment that we're talking about. It's not working for us. It leaves all of us behind with total political dysfunction, endless wars, mountains of debt, while the two major parties enrich their own power and reward themselves and special interests.
Okay. All right, let's talk about something that is tough from a bipartisan standpoint, and that is the most recent selection of Justice Kavanaugh. Marty, would you have voted for Justice Kavanaugh to be approved? Your thoughts on that whole procedure and where we are?
Well, let's talk about the whole procedure. That was embarrassing. I mean, we as a nation are better than this. To make a circus out of the appointment of our Supreme Court Justice, Judge Kavanaugh, was something that we should all be very embarrassed about. I think it was mishandled by both sides. I think to have Judge Kavanaugh's life put out there as it was something that we should, again, be embarrassed of as a nation. I think he's well fit. I think he's well suited for the Supreme Court.
And would have
Notice my opponent makes reference to Judge Kavanaugh having to put his life out there without mention of what Dr. Christine Blasey did. Her worst fear was realized that she would go out on a limb and have to speak publicly and would be annihilated in the process. I read last night that she and her family still have not returned to their home because of death threats. Now, I think the entire process was overly politicized. I don't like the way it worked. I thought it was a perfect example of lack of civility and proper discourse in Washington. And I do think that the appointment of a Supreme Court justice should not be a highly politicized process. What happened with Merrick Garland was a highly politicized process, and it was continued.
What happened?
The Kavanaugh situation is a sad fiasco, and it's the embodiment of why the establishment parties are not working anymore. Because look at this. These two parties were willing to take two people's lives, Dr. Ford and Brett Kavanaugh, and rip them apart. Why? Because they wanted to win. Both sides just wanted to win. Is there any doubt in anyone's mind that if the roles were reversed, the exact same thing would happen? This is actually a great endorsement for term limits on the Supreme Court, because it's become so politicized that we need to.
Dr. Ford's biggest fear was realized when the letter was leaked. She asked to remain anonymous. She did not want to be out in the public eye. It wasn't leaked by the Republicans, it was leaked by the Democrats. That's when her biggest fears were realized. And it's sad, it is sad. It's sad that we as a nation had to witness that. And I'm hoping moving forward it never happens again.
Susan, if you were bipartisan, and there is in fact a push to impeach him as justice, would you support that?
No, at least not at this point in time, not based on what the record is.
So your perspective process happened, and you're going to live with it.
Yes, I want to go to Washington to get things done. I'm really not interested in a 2-year distraction process known as impeachment of anybody. I think my whole reason for going to Congress is because I want to work for the people that are in this room and throughout the 7th District. I want to get things done. I don't want to see a bunch of circus
So you don't
sideshows.
revisit, okay, all right, good point. All right, let's keep rolling on this, and I want to talk a little bit about, well, let me, while I'm on this, real quickly, Marty, I know your campaign, you experienced an issue where, in fact, you were accused of a workplace situation. your thoughts on, I guess my question was, could you relate to the process, having seen that, and your feelings on what happened and the effect on your campaign?
Yeah, I think everybody knows how I feel about it or felt about it. Falsely accused of something that never happened. You know, you have your whole career in life exposed by an anonymous tipster, and it was devastating. It was devastating to me. It was devastating to my family. It was devastating to my campaign. You know, you gotta understand, in my situation, this is a tip that came 11 days after I announced my run for Congress. Do I think it's a political hit job? I sure do. Do I know where it came from? I don't. You know, but from day one, I said this never happened, and it never did happen, and the truth was on our side. Now, as we know, it's been cleared. It is now in the past, but at the end of the day, damage was done. So I could relate. I absolutely could relate to Brett Kavanaugh when he was there.
Okay. Thank you.
To say something about the media, I think we're all living too much in a world of the 24-hour news cycle, and it gets tiresome and it becomes repetitive, and it does tend to inflame people in a way that perhaps isn't appropriate. But I do absolutely believe in the necessity for a free, independent press, that they have to show themselves to be responsible members of the press, but it is a guarantee of the First Amendment to the Constitution, and it is one that is fundamental to our democracy.
Yeah. And so I guess back to the not for the faint of heart when you run today, you better be ready for that. So that's a very good point. I want to also make sure we talk a little about immigration, and we have a two-part to this, so we're going to have more time. Your thought. Let's go right to ICE and the hit that they're taking in terms of both sides. Anybody's thoughts? I'll go with you. Go ahead, Mr. Sophie. Your thoughts on Tim? Your thoughts on ICE and immigration where we are?
Well, immigration where we are is total chaos because the establishment parties for decades have not solved this problem. And we don't have a semblance of an immigration system right now. And it's created chaos at the border and dysfunction. What I think we need is more legal immigration. We need more people coming here, and we need them to do it legally.
Okay.
We need that for our economy, and I think more.
So you're saying make it easier to legally immigrate? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
All right,
and then at
ICE?
the same time, it's fair to have border security and to have borders that are enforced.
Where are you on ICE? Good, bad? Just
I think the people are obsessed with ICE as an agency instead of looking at what these agencies do. And what makes me uncomfortable, I don't think we need a force, an internal force going around the
so
country.
you're for getting rid of ICE?
No, like I said, the organization itself, it's what people call it that matters.
All right, Susan.
Our immigration system is broken and has been for a number of years. That's exemplified by the family separation policy, all of which we've seen the devastating effect of. I don't think the history books are going to treat us kindly for the separation of those families. I think that as part of a comprehensive bipartisan approach to immigration reform, we have to take a hard look at ICE as well as other agencies and make sure that those agencies are doing the work that they were called upon to do. And if that includes revising some of the things that they're called upon to do, then we create.
So you're not saying at this point, first of all, you're saying that it's broken, the system, but ICE, you're not totally.
I'm not calling for the abolition of ICE. I'm calling for its reform as part of a comprehensive
Okay,
plan.
good. Marty?
Yeah, our immigration system is something we've been talking a lot about. You know, I don't necessarily think our immigration system is broken. We have laws in place right now. We're not enforcing the laws that we have in place right now. We're not enforcing our laws. We need to secure our borders, our port of entries. You know, we need to fix our chain migration system as well. We want merit-based immigration. These are all things that are on the books. We just need to enforce these things. As far as ICE goes, I think we need more ICE agents. Right now, we have roughly 3,000 ICE agents in the field right now. 1,500 of them are doing paperwork. The other 1,500 are securing our border. We need more
So
than that.
for ICE and a simple question for the wall, yes or no?
I'm opposed to the wall. I think it's a ridiculous waste of taxpayer money. I do believe we need secure borders.
Okay. Tim?
the wall is antiquated thinking of the old parties. I mean, I think we need technology, we need innovation and ways to secure the border that way. The wall's old thinking in my
So more a technological wall
Yeah,
instead
sure.
of a physical. Marty?
The wall is one way to secure the border, you know, and we can use other avenues as well through technology and drones and more enforcement. So, but we do need to start securing our borders.
All right, almost getting close to the end of our first half. I do want to say this, I checked before I got here in terms of your campaigns and the fundraising. Susan, about 1.1 million, Marty, about half, and you're at, I'm trying to think where we are, Tim, 30, or 60,000, I'm sorry, 60,000. What is that? I guess my question is, you have said no dollars from corporate tax, correct?
Correct.
Your thoughts on that?
So I think the first priority that all the new Congress needs to look at is campaign finance reform. It costs too much money to lead a campaign of this type, and that's money that could be well spent solving other problems in this country. I don't and won't take corporate PAC money because I don't think that politicians should be answering to corporate sponsors. As there was a joke about politicians wearing NASCAR-type jerseys with their corporations listed on their jersey. I think that's an inherent conflict of interest.
Okay. Anybody else thoughts on where we are in fundraising? Tim, your thoughts? I mean, there's a disparity. Is that what's wrong with the system, or is that not, or should you be getting more support?
I think the answer to the question of financing in this race is to follow the money. Follow the money. Both of my candidates are opponents are very well financed. And Susan says that she doesn't take money from corporations, but when you look at her funding, 35% of it comes from PACs and committees. So who gives money to those PACs? It's not a barber in Bath. It's not a baker in Allentown. It's very rich people and companies from all across the country who are trying to get their piece of the pie. Both of my opponents are establishment candidates.
Okay, Susan, go ahead, then I'll go to Marty.
Some of the PACs that have given to me are PACs like Planned Parenthood, to which people contribute at the rate of $25 a month on a regular, ongoing basis. League of Conservation Voters, similarly, small contributors who do it on an ongoing monthly basis. I've got more than 10,000 donors. Our average contribution is less than $100. So that's my response to Mr. Silver's.
Yeah, you know, these elections cost incredible amount of money. And it's disgusting how much money is spent. And then we're talking about the money we raise. We're not talking about the outside money that's already here, that's already spending on TAC ads. You know, Susan raised a lot of money. And I agree with Tim. A lot of her money does come from PACs. It may not be corporate PACs, but it comes from PACs. So, you know, it's a bit hypocritical when you say, I'm not going to take corporate PAC money, but I'll take special interest PAC money. You know, I received some business PAC money. It's just economy. I mean, again, if I will take money from business PACs that I believe in and I think are doing great things, not only for this country, but also for the Lehigh Valley here. So again, you talk about campaign finance reform, a lot of people are talking about this. If it was up to me, you know, I would say you're only allowed to raise the money within your district. Because if you look at it, and you look at the money, you'll see a lot of money coming from outside this district to make.
We're almost out of time. Do you want to touch on that? Is there a difference between a corporate PAC and
Yes,
Emily's list? Or?
There absolutely is. The PACs that I take money from are value-based PACs, either people who care about the environment, people who care about reproductive choice, people who care about education, people who care about working people like labor unions. My opponent has taken money from insurance companies, the NRA. That's a corporate PAC.
Okay. Listen, I want to say this, because we have a million more questions. I want to get back to this. We are out of time for our first half, so thank you for being with us. Thank you, everybody. Short break, but thank you, everyone.
show it away. My buddy's give me a water. Suck it.
face. Several years ago, there were a lot of people who graduated from universities without job and with a high level degree. Right now, that's not the case. There are more jobs than there are people willing to work. One thing I will say is we also have to encourage kids to now look at trades, skilled labor jobs. Not everybody has to go to a four-year college, risk taking on that debt and not having a job waiting for them. But restructuring debt is something that needs to be taken a look at.
Tim, anything on that one?
That part is exactly right about skilled workers. I saw this all the time when I was the business reporter for this network. There are jobs sitting there that are great jobs that need to be filled. I don't know why politicians are always insisting that everyone needs to go to college. And one of the results of that is the prices going up and up and up. Why does that happen? One of the reasons is because the government continues to give out loans, more and more and more loans. And what happens? Colleges know they can keep charging more and more and more, and it's why we're in this ridiculous situation where politicians are telling everyone they have to go to college, and kids are choosing between, do I want to go to the school with the rock climbing wall, or do I want to go to the one with the spa that's $50,000 to put me in debt, and the students are the ones that end up with the problem.
Go ahead, jump in, anybody.
A lot of this debt does come from private universities as well. They have great marketing strategies. They encourage individuals to participate in college who normally shouldn't be taking college courses. They acquire an incredible amount of debt, and then they have to pay it back without even a degree. So that's another thing we need to look at: are private universities and these catchy marketing plans.
Susan.
This is not just about people who decide to go to fancy universities with climbing walls and spas. This is about people who want to advance themselves and want to find some sort of vocation or career. One of the reasons I'm so happy to be endorsed by the AFL-CIO and other labor unions is because they provide exactly the kind of apprenticeship and training programs that a lot of people in this district need. And the Republican attacks on organized labor, I think, are one of the worst things that is happening in the country.
All right, I want to make sure we get across the scene and talk about foreign policy. You're going to have to be elected, have to participate in foreign policy. I'll just start at 30,000 feet. Do you like the direction of our foreign policy, taking on some other countries, China and so on, relative to tariffs, as well as pointing out the issues with Iran? Your thoughts, general thoughts on foreign policy? I'll start with Susan, we'll go right down the line.
I think it's a mixed bag right now. I think that there is some good that the Trump administration is trying to accomplish in the field of trade and tariffs. But on the other hand, I think that there is no sound strategy or long-term thoughtful thinking that's going on. And that concerns me greatly. We should not have a president who is meeting with the leader of a country that is known to have hacked our democracy in 2016. I think that's inappropriate. I think efforts to, and I also am very, very concerned about how the relationship we have with our longtime allies that we've had for decades now that are essentially being shredded. And we need those allies. They need us and we need them. And I'm very, very concerned about that.
You're being Europe, you're concerned, for instance.
For instance.
Okay. Marty.
Yeah, I like the way our president's been handling everything. I really do. I feel like he's brought some negotiating table we never thought would be possible. This is a man who comes with business experience. He's all about the negotiation. We're seeing that. We're seeing that right now. Okay, say what you want, but he is the first leader to sit down with North Korea. He has China coming to the negotiating table with his trade and tariffs. He has terrorists on the run. These are good things. These are good things that happen.
All right.
It's interesting the way you framed the question, that was, as members of Congress, you're going to have to deal with foreign policy. And what I would say is, I wish Congress would more, because this is a huge problem, and one of the reasons I'm running, because do-nothing Congresses for decades have abdicated power back to the executive branch on a lot of these things that you're talking about. Congress is supposed to have war-making power in this country, not the president. Congress is supposed to oversee trade policy instead of letting a president just launch a trade war. These are things I want Congress to go back to having more power and more decision-making at the table with things like this.
You mean more power or be more definitive in terms of what they're doing, make decisions and act? Is that what you mean? Or
Both. I think that they should act as a check on the presidency and not just pick the president that they like. And I also think that the Congress's intended role was for that.
Gotcha. Okay. Talk about real quickly, if we can, make sure we get all the items in. Legalization of marijuana. We've got medical marijuana in many states. It has had an impact. Let's face it, the situation has had an impact on our prisons. Your thoughts on legalization of marijuana? And I'll start with you, Tim, and come down the other direction.
Yes, I think we should legalize marijuana. And more broadly, I think that we should end the war on drugs. I have seen this affected me personally in my life. One of my best friends, like a brother to me, died of a heroin overdose. And I know this is something that's touched a lot of people around this district. I'm sure Marty and Susan have heard it too, in their ways around this district. I mean, I think we have to accept the fact that addiction is a health issue and it's not a crime. And throwing people in jail for that has done nothing but create disastrous unintended consequences.
So you don't see marijuana as an entree to any other drugs or addiction?
I don't know about that. What I know is that
I'm not saying you
what
do
I
or
know
don't.
is that the prohibition of it doesn't do anything.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. All right. Marty.
I'm fully supportive of medical marijuana. Right now, I cannot support legalizing marijuana for recreational use.
Okay.
You know, just it's who I am morally, it doesn't sit well with me. So, but legalizing it is something right now I just cannot support.
Are your concerns maybe similar to alcohol, the accidents, impaired driving? I mean, your position on that is based on
All the above.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Right. So.
I am in favor of legalizing marijuana, but with all of the same attendant laws that we have concerning alcohol. So that if you're driving while impaired, whether it's alcohol or it's marijuana, you are subject to penalties. I think that we must expand the use of medical marijuana. I think it's in Pennsylvania, we have medical marijuana allowed, and yet they can't use it in the veterans hospitals because we don't have a marijuana law at the federal level that would allow them to use them in the veterans hospitals. And finally, I think it's a source of revenue. Honestly, there are so many people using marijuana who are not who are going to continue to use it, and our municipalities can actually derive income from that.
All right, very good. All right, let's get to this one. Let me just ask you this so people get to know you. We've got Brown Range. What would be the first one, maybe two things? I'll start with you, Marty, and go over to Tim, and to you, Susan. First thing, one or two you work on the minute you got to Washington.
National debt. I mean, we do have an incredible spending problem in this country. We do. We need to rein in our national debt, make sure that we get back to balanced budgets, creating budgets, something that hasn't been done in years. Right now, we're a country that just spends like mad, a lot more than we're taking in. That's something that needs to stop, or else we're going to hand it off to our great-grandchildren, and it's unfair.
Would you be willing to make what are tough decisions to cut that spending? I mean, we almost hear nothing about the deficit at this point. It's about program.
Well, when we're continuing with continued resolutions and creating spending bills with CRs, I mean, this is something that, they're kicking the can down the road, so tough decisions need to be made. I've done it at county level. I expect to do it at federal level as well.
All right, so that's your first thing.
Well, we hear from Republicans all the time that we need to cut the deficit, and then what happens? They cut the deficit, they cut taxes and ran up deficits worse in a lot of times than the Obama years. This is what we're hearing from Republicans running, and then Republicans who win spend away. So that's why we need something different from the two parties.
Go to Susan. Go ahead. Jump in here.
Yeah, I'll just say this. Because of our federal, our new federal tax act, we have seen a surplus right here in Pennsylvania. I mean, these are corporate receipts that we're seeing. So right now, the state of Pennsylvania, it has a $200 million surplus because of corporate tax receipts. That's because of the federal tax cut that we've seen.
The tax cut's great. We just have to also cut spending.
All right, Susan.
The recent tax bill added $3 trillion to our national debt. That is going to be made up by Republicans on the backs of working people by taking away Medicare and Social Security. To answer your question, Tony, my first priority in Congress would be campaign finance reform, followed closely by healthcare reform and infrastructure.
Okay. Well, when you say,
I'd like to say this, again, the Republicans are gonna pay for the tax cuts by taking money out of Medicare. Democrats forget to tell everybody how they took $762 million out of Medicare for Obamacare. That wasn't true on any as well. So, again, there's both sides of the blame here. It's not one side or the other.
Exactly.
all right, did you want to comment on that, Susan?
Not on that, but I just wanted to say regarding campaign finance reform.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that. Why is that your number one priority?
It's my number one priority because it affects every single issue that Congress votes on. And we have too much big money, dark money in politics. I've been endorsed by End Citizens United, and I'm very proud of that fact. I think we absolutely have to get to some sort of campaign finance funding policy that lowers the amount of total money in politics and restructures the way we fund our campaigns.
Anyone want to jump on that? Or go with that? Okay.
I don't know exactly how she plans to do that. I mean, what are your specifics? I think it's a great idea.
There are a number of very good bills pending right now in Congress that haven't gotten any traction because they've been opposed by Republicans. Yeah. John Sarbanes out of Maryland has a terrific one called, I think it's called We the People, but don't quote me on that. And it has to do with limiting the amount, and if candidates agree to cap their donations at a certain level, they're entitled to matching funds for it.
When it comes to campaign finance, follow the money. Both my opponents are corporate establishment candidates. This district is awash in money from everywhere.
Isn't that the way the system works, I guess is the question. Is that...
If it's the way it works, then just be honest about it. That's the difference.
Okay. All right, very good. All right, so listen, here's what we need to do. Particularly the host in particular failed to do the opening argument. So I want to do this. We want to give you more than enough time. So we're going to add another 25 seconds to your closing statements so you have enough time. Before we do that, I want to say to everybody, thank you all. You've been a great, great audience. You have been fantastic. You got about 20 more seconds than I said 10, 25 minutes, knock 5 off of it. But hey, about 20 more seconds than you would have had originally. Give you a little more time for your closing statement. Kill it, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Thank you, everyone. Is the partisan civil war in this country helping you and your family? That's the main question of this entire election. And if you want something different, you have to vote for something different. We've seen this playing out for decades of the carousel going round and round and round of both establishment parties enriching themselves and their special interests and leaving all of us behind with mountains of debt, endless war, and broken, dysfunctional government. The only way left for us to stop this deepening cultural and political divide we have is to have the courage to stand together and say, this system is broken and we need something different.
There you go. All right, Marty.
Thank you, Tony. I mean, what a great conversation this was. I'd like to just say this. I mean, what a difference 2 years makes. 2 years ago, we were told we would never see GDP growth reach 3% ever again. We were told our manufacturing jobs were long gone. We were facing the highest corporate and small business income tax in the entire world. We had unemployment levels that were unacceptable. Then we had an election. Look at where we are now. We're going to have sustained 4% GDP growth. We have tax reform that has put more money in the pockets of hardworking families. We have more jobs than there are people willing to work. Our unemployment level is at historic lows, the lowest since 1969. This election is going to come down to a simple choice. It's going to be results or resistance. If you want to continue with the results and what we've seen over the last 2 years, I think we know who you should vote for. Embrace the results. Or on the other side, prepare for resistance. If you make the wrong decision, and our economy will be headed downwards. This election is going to be about the economy, it's going to be about our people, it's going to be about what matters most to the United States, and most importantly, what matters most to the people of Lehigh Valley.
Okay, Marty.
in a military family that lived paycheck to paycheck. I put myself through college, and when I got to law school, I was really struggling, and what saved me were federal student loans. Now, 30 years later, I've been practicing law here all this time. My 2 children were born here, raised here, and went to public schools here. And by the way, I paid back those student loans. That's the way government is supposed to work, in my view. We have to invest in our future people in this country. I believe in equal opportunity for everyone. I think that I want to go to Washington so that I can work to accomplish affordable, high-quality health care for every single person, so that I can work on raising wages for the working families right here in the 7th District, so that we can protect our seniors and our students. I'm not a politician. I don't take corporate PAC money. If I'm elected, I will answer only to you, the voters of the 7th District. That's what I want to do. We can change how Washington is working, but we can only do that by changing the people that we send to Washington.
All right. I want to thank all of you. What a great crowd. I want to thank these 3 candidates. I want to thank you out there. I want to thank our friends at Coordinated Health. Hey, don't forget about Citizens and Matters. We'll see you all next week.
We are clear. That was the best audience ever. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Susan. This will air October 15th and 22nd. It will also be online as of the 15th. One more thank you to Coordinated Health and WFMZ for making this possible. And to all of you, have a great day.
And one quick announcement. It's a housekeeping announcement.